Welcome to the Magic in the Cloud podcast, where exceptional visionaries reveal the personal journeys behind their remarkable success. This is a conversation with leaders who've transformed industries by navigating pivotal moments, making bold decisions, and cultivating extraordinary teams. We explore the turning points that define their careers, those instances where intuition met strategy and everything changed. It's an intimate look at the leadership philosophies that drive revolutionary outcomes, with cloud solutions as the quiet enabler. Here are your hosts, Joseph Griffith and Ryan Golombeski.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Magic in the Cloud. My next guest today is a seasoned business development strategist who transforms underperforming divisions into profitable powerhouses, often in a really short period of time. He has a unique blend of manufacturing know-how, sales expertise, and a knack for uncovering hidden revenue. Some revenue streams that are often with lots of big numbers behind them. Lastly, he's got a really rich background spanning sales consulting, cool, CRM systems, cool, comedy, super cool, and even publishing a satire outlet, making for a sharp mind with a great sense of timing, as Steve Martin used to say. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my next guest, Rob Bedell. Hey, Rob, how you doing today?
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you built a career on turning around businesses and finding hidden value where oftentimes other people miss it. If you could sum up your secret sauce behind that success and a story, what would that be?
Well, every company's different, but understanding one thing about it, sales is the key thing. And as soon as you can figure this out, as soon as I figured this out, it made everything easier. Sales is not about me. It's about everyone else that I talk to. And as soon as everyone understands that simple concept, that it's not about you, it's about everyone else, then that just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying is, I think when we were raised younger, we were trained that it was about us, right? We were trained things like your statistics, right? How many deals, what size are your deals? By the way, those numbers translate to how much you got paid. So where do you think you personally made that shift from it being about you to being about everybody but you?
Early on in my career, I mean, if the gray in my beard didn't tell you I'm a little bit older, then my first job was selling classified advertising. That's when newspapers relied on classified ads to make money. And once I got into it and once I started talking to people and just having conversations and realizing that, if what I had helped them, I was going to be able to, grow their business and make their life easier. And then it just clicked on me. It's like, this has nothing to do with me. It has to do with them and their needs. And the funniest thing is, there's one time I was talking to a lawyer because I was selling the legal directory. And he's like, I was like all excited. I was, young in sales, going through all the demographics and everything that we had. He goes, "Oh, this sounds really good." I said, "Well, what type of law do you practice?" He's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, he's like, I do business to business transactions." I'm like, "Oh, I don't think this is going to work for you." He's like, "What?" I said, "This is more for DUI, divorce lawyers, criminal lawyers." He goes, "Oh, you're not going to take my money?" He said, "I'm a sales guy. I'll take your money, but I don't think this is for you." I said, "But if you know any of the others guys, let me know." And sure enough, 3 people called me next week that he referred to me. One of them became my biggest client. And so,
wow, man.
Again, realizing it wasn't about me selling him into the directory and about him and it working or not working for him, did well for me.
Yeah. So I think what I heard was, that's awesome you shared that. What I heard is you also got really good at saying no if it wasn't a fit for you or for the customer. And as a result of that, you got credibility and trust out of the relationship. And then you got referrals from people who the person you said no to qualified the other 3 for you. That amazing, dude? That's amazing. I admire the fact that you're really good at saying no. I think it's a really good takeaway for people, especially who are younger in their careers. You would argue, right? Be better at saying no than saying yes. You could argue that.
Yes, and qualifying people and understanding when to walk away when it's not a good fit.
Yeah. So take me through, I'm the owner of a struggling division of a company, and take me through your approach where you step in and you're trying to help me out. what do you look for first versus second versus later?
Very first thing I look for is what's their value proposition. And the funny thing is most companies have it wrong, especially IT companies, because they're speaking in their voice, not their customer's voice. So I gave them a simple little exercise to go do. And actually all your viewers and listeners will get to use this exercise for their business if they want to. Go out and ask your 3 best clients 3 simple questions. What value did you add that they expected? What value did you add that they didn't expect? And what's the best thing about working with you? The first 2 are just lost leaders get them third. It's that third one that's the hook. What's the best thing about working with you? I did this with a father-son insurance inspection company. We're around for 40 years, couldn't break $1 million. I sat down with them. I said, why should people do business with you? They said, we have the best time, service, and quality. Time, service. I'm like, okay. I went out to their 3 best clients, asked them those questions. They all said the same thing, Joe. In this industry, insurance, there's always going to be problems. And when there are problems, we know we can call or email them. They'll find out what happened, who was involved, and how to make sure it doesn't happen again, and get back to it within 24 to 48 hours. And I was like, that sounds like good customer service and communication. They're like, yeah, they do it. No one else is doing it. It's like, well, what about time, service, and quality? They all said the same thing, Joe. If you're not doing time, service, and quality, you're not working in this industry. So we changed the proposition value from time, service, and quality that all the other inspection companies were beating their chest about to, hey, we have the best customer service and communication. When there are problems, and there will be, we'll be part of your team. We'll make it a non-factor as quickly as possible. That next year, they grew 26%. Year after that, 63%, because we're speaking to the market in the market's voice.
That's great. And I'm just curious, why do you think people forget? I think the lesson learned here is go talk to your customer about why they hire you. But why do you think people don't do that either more consistently or at all? Why or how do they miss that?
A lot of times they're so close to it, they don't even think about it. A lot of times they're wrapped up in their business and how's things going and how can I get more? And they get into almost like a panic mode that they forget to take a step back, talk to the people that already are working with them, and use their voice.
So what you're saying is their blind spot is some type of, you use the word panic. What do you mean by panic? Tell me what you mean by panic.
What I mean by panic is, okay, we need to get there. We need, just so focused on the long-term goal that they don't see the short-term or what they need to do.
So they're more focused on, hey, we have to make an extra $1 million this year, rather than, can we get the list of the 10 details that'll help us acquire a new client, including 1 or 3 clients just told us, which is the best customer service. So let's go spend an hour on 10 ways to provide good customer service rather than 4 hours on how are you going to get another $1 million. Would that be a good example?
Yeah. And it's basically, what do I need to do today to make tomorrow better? As opposed to what do I need to do to get to the end of the year? It's like, let's focus on today and tomorrow, and then we can focus on this week and then this month and then this quarter and then this year. But let's get focused on what we need to do today to make tomorrow a better day.
Yeah. Hey, tell me about, you gave some examples already. Maybe there were some your great examples, but I'm always curious about hidden revenue streams where you show a client that, hey, did you know there was money here? You got an example or two as to where you showed somebody like you can make a few extra bucks here?
Yeah, there's always money left on the table. I'll give you one of the biggest ones that I had. It was a manufacturing company. They were spongeables. They did sponges that were infused with soap, lotion, and fragrance. Every woman I gave this to loved it. And it was a guy that I trained martial arts with and his mom and stepdad's business. So I sat down with them and said, okay. And I went through their books. I try not to do that anymore, but I went through their books. I was like, okay, everything looks good. I was like, what's this revenue over here? They're like, oh, that's Spongel. That's our high-end product. I'm like, oh, who calls on them? They're like, no one. I'm like, oh, what's the average order? $200. I'm like, how many of these do you have? And she's like, well, between 2,000 and 2,500. And so I was like, okay, so you have $400,000 to $450,000 a month that no one's calling on. And so we're able to actually take that and spin it off into a company of its own. And it's doing hugely successful right now. But they were so close to it, focusing on this, that they weren't paying attention to that.
Yeah, dude, I think that's always I think another hidden lesson you just offered is the cliche, another set of eyes and ears. right? So sometimes these things are so simple. But first of all, can you help me? You and I need to come up with an idea that only makes 400 grand a month. So you said a month? Uh, c- we don't need to do the podcast anymore. When you, and it was just a side hustle for them. But but uh, but another example of why it would be a good idea to engage with someone like you is just sometimes that gift is right in front of you. It's just right under your nose. You just, like you said, you're so busy, you just don't see it.
Yeah, they're so close to it, focusing on this, their main core of the business that they weren't paying attention to another revenue source. And there's a lot, that happens a lot in manufacturing, is there's an additional revenue stream that they're not paying attention to, that they just kind of say, okay, it comes in and that's fine.
Wow, that is really cool. If anybody's watching this podcast, make that or tell my producers, make that a short. I think that's a great, really basic is best practices. Bring somebody in with a separate set of eyes and ears to take a look at things that rhetorically you think are just given, right? Let's talk a little bit about people. One, I want to talk about your guidance around building sales teams, and then I want you to talk about how you take resistant leadership and lasso that. But let's first talk about building a sales team from, say, the ground up, or maybe a team that you have to rebuild. What kind of cultural type features or attributes to look for in the talent that you use to build a team?
Again, it really depends on the industry and what they're selling, because every sales team can be different based on the industry and what they're selling and the sales cycle of that, because you need to have different personalities based on that. But the overall things that you need to look for is the people that realize they're not in it for them, they're in it for the company, and they're in it for the customer. So people that are not so self-centered, oh, me. Usually they don't. I mean, I worked for this one company, this newspaper group at one time, and I just got into it, and I sold something into this directory, and this lady walked by and goes, "That's mine." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "That's my client." I'm like, "No, they never heard of us before, and they never mentioned you. So why is this your client?" "I sold them years ago. That's my client." I was like, "No." And then so she went and got the sales manager. The sales manager came out and said, "Oh, just give it to her." I'm like, "Why? They didn't know us. They didn't know her. I did all that effort to get this." And he goes, just give it to her. And so he gave it to her. And as I was walking away, one of the other salespeople came up and goes, "That happens all the time."
Mm.
And I went, "What?" And he goes, "Yep." And so I walked into the sales manager's office. I said, "I hear this happens all the time. That should be my account because she didn't do anything for it." And he goes, "She makes more money than anybody here. What, you think I'm going to listen to you? You just started." And so I said, "Okay," I quit. And I walked out of the office.
Wow.
This is the story about karma. So I go to work for another newspaper. And about 6 months later, we're at a manager's meeting. She's like, "Oh, we're just going to offer this new woman this sales job. Her name is," and she spit out her name. And I was like, she worked for this paper. I'm like, "You cannot hire her." And they said, "What?" I said, "You cannot hire her." And they said, "Why?" I said, "Because this is what she'll do to the team." And I walked them through what happened. And they're like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "What's the matter?" Because, "Well, she knows we're going to offer her the position. That's why she's here." And I said, "Okay, you guys go down the front stairs. I'll go down the back stairs and I'll meet you in the lobby." So I go walking down the back stairs. She's sitting on the couch and Bev and Dennis are talking to her. She looks up and she sees me and she just almost sinks into the couch. I'm like, "Oh, hey, how are you?" She was, "Good." I said, "Bev and Dennis, I'll see you at the next manager's meeting." And I walked up the stairs. Bev and Dennis came walking to my office about 5 minutes later, laughing. And I'm like, "What happened?" He goes, she sat there in dead silence and panic, looked on her face for like 3 minutes before she even said anything. Then she goes, "Would I ever have to report to him?" And Bev and Dennis like, "Yeah, of course you'd want to. Rob's a great sales manager and leader." And she just got up and walked out of the room. So again, we didn't add that to their sales team because that would have just destroyed it. So because she was about her, not about the team.
Yeah, that's a great story, and it's been a common thread, Rob, that I think sometimes with psychology and selective response, which is you see what you want to see, so you buy a certain model of a car, and then the next day you see all those. But I got to tell you, I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, which is The good news is, man, like you said, you don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the wittiest. You don't even necessarily have to be the hardest worker. You have to be a hard worker. But today's world embraces people who are unselfish, people who are vulnerable, right? People who are not even customer first, but like active listeners, right? Earlier today, we said, really good at saying no. I don't think this is a good fit for you. Here's why. And I really appreciate you summing up all those. This is really about culture. I don't know that it's necessarily aptitude.
Yeah, no, and if there are the right culture in place and the right leadership in place, and you have a sales process for everyone to follow, you'll get the most out of your department, your division, and your business.
Yeah. Hey, so let's talk a little bit about leadership. And I got to think you go into some of these gigs when all the best intentions and the leaders are saying all the right things. We're so excited for you to be here. We embrace change, whatever. And then tell us a little bit about what really happened. So there's a lot of salespeople going, oh, I should call this guy Rob and get my boss to talk to him, or whatever. But when you actually engage, talk to us about some of the resistance that comes up that you didn't hear during your due diligence to onboard a new client. What are some of those leadership behaviors that you have to inoculate?
Well, it's funny. The best story I can explain that would be I worked for the Daily Breeze in Southern California, this newspaper, and I had my boss, Greg, and I worked there for a year, and then I got recruited away from them by career path. And as I was leaving, I was talking to Greg and said, something, Greg, I'm glad I had you as a boss. He's like, why? I said, because I came from a weekly, now I'm coming from a daily, and you have the daily experience, and I was able to, offer ideas and exchange stuff with you. And then he got up and went and closed the door. And I was like, uh-oh. And then he sat back down. He goes, you know something, Rob? Sometimes I sat there and said, why did I hire someone so smart? Because you always had the right ideas. You always wanted to go in the right direction. And I'd run it up the chain and I'd be told no, but there's nothing I could do. So I had to tell you no. He goes, but you had the right ideas and just, keep on going in that direction. And it showed me that that's the level of leadership. Sometimes you can have the right ideas, but the people, if they're leading and they don't want to hear it, they don't want to do it because that's the way they've always done it, then you're going to run into problems. And that was the biggest problem with some of the old school leaders is that phrase. Why are we doing it this way? Because that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah. So as much as you and I perceive that the last 10 or 15 years, I know I'm a back-end baby boomer, that attitude has shifted. You're saying that in reality, it really hasn't. People still want to hold on to their old belief systems, their old habits.
It depends on the industry. The newer generations, the newer advertising, the marketing companies are all more the latest things. Sometimes in manufacturing, yeah, I'll run into that because again, some manufacturing companies have been around for hundreds of years, or at least a few decades. So that's the way they've done it. But a lot more now because of the parents that ran it, the kids are coming into it and they're starting to add the new concept and mentality. So it's changing, but it's changing slower in the manufacturing field than it is in the other industries.
Yeah. So that's the perfect segue to my last business question. You were mentioning some of the newer leadership coming in and embracing different things, including AI. So let's wrap up the business side of this around AI. And where I come from with this, which is I'm a big fan of executive readiness. So that example you gave earlier of, hey, you say you want to do this, yet your point of view around how you want to do it is very different across your C-suite. But where do you see AI, automation, et cetera, playing in the sales process today?
There was a lot of fear around AI. Oh, it's going to replace your jobs. It's going to replace your jobs. And what I usually tell people is, yeah, it's going to replace the lower level jobs because AI is going to do all the grunt work, all the stuff that everyone hated doing, all the prospecting, all the qualifying, all that stuff that any salesperson would tell you they had to do it, but they hated it. And so I see AI replacing all of that. I think in the sales role, you'll still have to have a human involved with it when there's another human, there when you're dealing with a business. But I think a lot of the entry level stuff, a lot of the so-called grunt work will be done by AI.
Yeah, I think we've actually come to a place where this could be this is probably our third or fourth crack at having tech do the grunt work, right? We had some algorithms for next best action, and we had some other tech things that came along. And typically, that's how it works. You and I have been doing this for a while. Usually, like the third or fourth or fifth crack at it, we get it to work. Like marketing, for example. I think marketing went through 6 or 7 iterations before finding ways to stay connected to your customer via technology actually worked, right? And now we see a shift where podcasts and emails and all that, right? Tech is actually the way that you build intimacy. Kind of crazy, but I do believe you. I believe that we're at a place now where that grunt work, the old cliche, right? You pay your salespeople a lot of money. You want them to spend most of their time in the most valuable parts of the sales process to acquire new customers. All right. So that's very cool. But my guest love to hear about you. So I always want to hear, where'd you grow up, and tell us a little bit about that upbringing of yours.
I grew up in different places. I was born originally back east. I'm a New Yorker, born in Huntington, Long Island, then moved from Huntington, Long Island to Buffalo, then from Buffalo to Tempe, Arizona. So from the freezer to the frying pan. So I'm in Southern California now. When people complain about weather here, I'm like, no, it's cold when you have to walk backwards or you freeze something off. It's hot when it's over 110 for a week straight. It's never that here.
That first move.
But I pretty much grew up in the Arizona area.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean to cut you off. I was just saying that first move, did you move from cold to colder when you moved from your hometown to Buffalo? Did it get colder or did it get warmer?
Oh, it got much colder. Oh, yeah. And people don't understand that. If you don't understand lake effect, it doesn't matter how many layers of clothes you put on. You have to walk backwards or you freeze something off.
Absolutely. My first lake effect experience was up in Albany, and I walked out in a brand new suit with a cup of coffee that didn't have a lid on it. Like in Albany, they're like, you must have a lid. And I walked out and I'm like, I'm from Philly. I don't need no lid. And that lake effect wind, man, blew the coffee all over my brand new white shirt. So I'm familiar with lake effect snow for sure. So you grew up in the cold, you moved to the warm, you had no complaints about the warm. In our earlier conversations, I'm really excited that, and I know you're proud that you've worn a lot of hats, man. You've been a publisher, a consultant, you've even been a comedian, or you are a comedian. When you think about all those things that you've done, Rob, but what, if any, skill crosses over the most in all those different hats you've worn?
Understanding your audience.
Yeah.
And understanding how they react to what you're doing and understanding. So when I did stand-up comedy, I didn't just stand behind a mic and I walked on the stage. I addressed the whole audience. I got everyone involved with it. I can tell when people were interested and when people weren't. I can tell when a joke was good and one just fell flat. And they happen. There are times that things just bomb. There's one time that the time I got the best life advice and business advice is the first time that I bombed on stage.
Oh, nice.
Crickets beginning to end bombed. I was down in Long Beach.
Nice.
And as the opener, 5 minutes was the longest 5 minutes of my life. And the headliner of that night saw me and he called me over and said, "Hey, kid, come here." And I had long hair at the time. He's like, "This looks like your audience. This is blue collar audience. Who's your influence?" Like, "Well, George Carlin." He goes, "You didn't adjust your message." Like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "This is a blue collar audience. You did white collar material. They're not going to hear you. You need to understand who you're talking to and how to talk to them so they can understand you." Best bit of advice ever.
I think that was, it's shame you always think of like that advice. Do you remember who that guy was, or do you remember his name? Because if you could, right, wouldn't you want to pick up the phone and go, "Yo, dude, thank you."
Yeah, that I've used that advice in every aspect, in every position that it was, is understanding my audience and understanding how to talk to them so they can hear me. I use that in every position that I had. When a sales position, that's what I used. When I was a sales manager dealing with sales teams, that's what I used. When I was a publisher, that's what I used.
Yeah, and I think you just reminded me of somebody who helped me teach me that. The common theme here is get out of your own head and get into the head of others. And so I remember this person trying to teach me that. And I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, the CFO worries about the money. The COO worries about operational efficiency. the guy on the shop floor worries about inventory turns and customer service. Like, oh, I see. So you can talk about your product or service or what you need from them, but you have to understand that's what's in their head, right? That's the messaging that you have to shape. And on the AI front, I think it's something we talked about. What you and I should do, we should do another podcast with my buddies who are working on this AI agent-based communications training. We should do another show with them. These guys are coming up with a tool that basically recreates Rob, right? So, hey, Rob, can we pay you to train these 3 people? Sure. Rob, can we pay you to train these 8 people? Sure. At some point, we can only do so many Robs. But these guys are working with agents that say, okay, you're talking about comedy to but like a blue collar guy, or you're talking about technology to a procurement guy, right? They are different types of conversations, even though the end objective might be the same. So that's a great idea, man. And I appreciate that. It's so cool to have comedy be the main thread through it all, right? That's awesome. So we don't know who that person was that gave you that great advice, but tell me about somebody else in your life who's been super influential, a mentor, a role model, and what did you learn from that person?
I am a 4-3 black belt in Hapkido, and I had the honor and privilege of studying with Grandmaster Bong Su Han for 10 years before his passing. And he had a huge influence on my life because he taught mind, body, and spirit. It wasn't just about the martial arts. It wasn't just about arm bars and kicks and punches. It was also about the spirituality. I mean, when I got my black belt, and it's so funny, everyone always kind of freaks out. I did my test. I wrote a 12-page paper, and I took an oral exam, and actually a 100-question test. So, he really truly made you understand the mind, body, and spirit of it. And it's funny when I talk to people, I said, I've used martial arts in the boardroom more than I've ever used it on the street. Like, what? You throw people across the table? Like, no. But you take people's arguments, you kind of use them and you switch around and turn it, against them to make them go, oh, yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, nice. And for those in the audience who don't know the martial arts, tell us what a grandmaster is. What's that position? And tell us about the respect and what hard work it takes to get that kind of title or recognition.
Grandmaster Han was a 9th degree black belt. So basically, in Hapkido, there's different martial arts have different levels. In Hapkido, I'm a 4th degree, but I'm not a master. So you don't get master till 6th degree. And then you get grandmaster when you get to 9th degree.
So this guy's worked twice as hard, twice as long, twice as much as you have.
There is a lot of, it takes time. I mean, Master Cruz and Master Frisky, some of the stuff they used to do was just, mind boggling, and just some of the kicks they could do, and just some of the techniques and how fluid they look doing it. And that, that's really the essence of it, is once you've done something, and that's Grandmaster Han with always things you'd always say to you when they're like, how do you do this? He goes, do it 1,000 times, then come and ask me. And so the funniest thing is, by the time you're the 999th time you get it, you're like, oh, that's how it's done, because you've tried it 1,000 times. And, and again, that's a philosophy that I've taken in business. Like, okay, we'll try this a bunch of different times. And once you have it down, once you do it 1,000 times, then you'll know how to do it and apply it in business all the time.
Yeah. So let me ask you, have you had an opportunity or two to tell him thank you?
I did before he passed.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're able to do that. I think a lot of us think that a lot and then don't pull the trigger and take the time to do that. My math teacher in high school is the best.
Yeah, because when I got my first degree test, he sat me down afterwards and he's like, and everyone, my first degree test with my partner, Mr. Steve Bergen, we did they made a video of it, and that was the training of how to do black belt techniques. And so I was like, oh, we did really good. Grandmaster Han sat down and said, you have a lot to learn still. And I was like, oh. And then I got my second degree, and he's like, okay, you're starting to get it. And then when I got my second degree, I said, well, I need to thank you, because I use what I do in here in my business practice. And he just sat there and looked at me and smiled. And he didn't say anything. And that's Grandmaster Han. He didn't say anything. He just would give you a look, and you're like, oh, okay, he appreciated that. Okay, and I can get up and leave now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's really important to go back and let the people who have influenced your life let them know how much you appreciate them. I think that's a really great lesson learned, and really only one that stuck with me maybe in the last 5 years. So I'm glad you did that. And in the small crazy world, you said you worked with a Steve Bergen, and I don't know that there are many Steve Bergens, but this isn't Steve Bergen who lives in Mexico now, is it? By chance?
I don't know where he is now. He actually, I don't, probably not. He probably went back because he was from Europe. So if he went anywhere outside the US, he would have gone back to Europe.
Yeah. Oh, okay. He was a European guy. You don't hear that name often, and it happened to be a high school friend of mine. I thought, wouldn't that be cool if he had crossed paths with Steve? But so as we look to wrap things up, what do you do? What do you do, man? You do a lot of stuff, man. What do you do to recharge?
I drink tequila. No, seriously.
Nice.
I'm a tequila snob. I probably know more about tequila than most people do. So basically, tequila is a lot like wine, and wine people get pissed off when I say it. But depending on what level the agave is grown at, how long it's aged, what barrels it's aged, and changes the complexity of it. And so, you have your Blanco, which isn't aged at all. You got your Reposado, which is aged, depending on who you talk to, up to 3 months. And then you got your Añejos, which is aged up to 6 months.
And as a connoisseur of tequila, what are the 2 or 3 attributes of the tequila that you feel differentiate the different types? Not necessarily expensive or inexpensive, but what are the 2 or 3 things? I'm not a tequila expert. I've had the $15, $60, and $150 shots. They all tasted great. I would say that the more expensive ones seem to taste better. But like wine, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. That's my taste. That's my opinion. What are the 2 or 3 attributes that make tequila rock?
What level the agave is grown at? Because if it's a lower desert agave, then it's going to have that peppery taste to it. So that's when you get that taste. If it's a higher desert agave, it's a little bit more smooth, so you don't have that. That's why usually the higher desert agaves are in the more expensive tequilas, which you don't have the peppery taste to it that kind of sometimes people don't like. And yeah, because the stuff that I drink, it's so funny. When I had a tequila tasting party for my friends, and someone like, "Where's the salt and lime?" They said, "If you take a salt and lime to the tequila I'm giving you, I'm going to punch you in the head." Then you do not use salt or lime with what I drink.
Nice, dude. That's it. All due respect to beers, man. I don't believe in putting a lime or a lemon in a beer either. I think a beer is a beer. Yeah. So that's great. Okay, we're all locked in on tequila. Now, for those of us who need to calm our minds, tell us a little bit more about meditation.
It's so funny, too, because I learned a lot about meditation from Grandmaster Han, because I was sitting with legs crossed and the hands on my knees and just trying to relax, but I kept feeling uncomfortable. My knees were bending and they're kind of hurting. And so I went up to Grandmaster Han. I'm like, I'm having a hard time meditating because I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about my knees, my rear end being on the floor and, be a little bit uncomfortable, my back getting a little stiff. He goes, yes. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, are you thinking about anything else? I'm like, no. He goes, then you're meditating. And once I stopped trying to not about my positioning, then I could find that empty, clear mind. But you have to kind of go through that to get there.
And as someone who, me or maybe a lot of our guests, I think I struggle to understand how to get there. Not certainly in our last couple of minutes, but in general, what advice can you offer about how to get there?
Start with moving meditation, kind of like a Tai Chi. It's where you're just focused on the movements of your body, what you're doing, forward and backwards, walking, and just really focus on how you feel doing that. And as you do more and more of that, your mind will slowly stop focusing on the movement and just really just become clear and calm.
Yeah, I appreciate that advice. Rob, this has been awesome. How can people reach you? If you could share your contact info, that'd be great.
Best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. Just type my name in there. I pop up. I'm the first one there that will pop up for you. I've been on LinkedIn forever, so they probably grandfathered me in. So yeah, that's the easiest way to find me.
I appreciate that. Nice to meet another member of the grandfathered in LinkedIn. I used to be proud to know what my number was, but that's long since. It used to be cool if you knew your number on LinkedIn days. I really appreciate the time. We got a chance to meet on a networking group a little while ago, and it's been great to get to know you. My listeners are really going to appreciate your advice. I thank you for that. Thanks for sharing some of your background on how you got to where you are today. I think a lot of great takeaways. I think the really trying to understand that it's not about you is probably the biggest one. It's not that easy, right? Like we said, you brought up thinking that it is about you. And it's not that easy to kind of let go of that and allow it to be more about your customer or the person that you're working with. So thanks for sharing all that today, Rob.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, this brings us to an end of another episode. We'll see you on the other side. See ya.
Magic in the Cloud podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.